So Leigh Whannell has taken on another universal monster. Last time it was the Invisible Man. This time it's the Wolf Man.
A lot of mans.
Next time it's Spider Man. No, that's not a universal monster.
No.
All right. So this was originally supposed to be a Ryan Gosling film, and over quite a period of time, years, I think. We went from Gosling and Leigh Whannell to like Leigh Whannell dropping out and a new director coming in, and then Gosling dropping out, and then Leigh Whannell coming back and Christopher Abbott taking over for Gosling. It was kind of like a weird, up and down thing that I was following. Like, oh, cool. Oh, bummer. Oh, okay. All
Mm,
right. So it's kind of all
yeah.
over the place. Um, and then Julia Garner signed on, and I was like, okay, now I'm much more interested. And we're finally here, Wolfman. Now this is about a family that is going to the father's father, uh, property
Yeah.
after his death, and they're gonna load up a truck full of stuff and
Hmm.
and probably sell the property. And when they get there, they run into a wolf man.
They do run into a wolf man.
um, so with this being Leigh Whannell, my expectations were pretty high.
Mm.
And one thing I knew was going to happen for sure, and I was correct because this is what I've come to expect. He's going to take a different approach, right? Like, this is not the classic Wolfman story, nor was his Invisible Man anything like the original Invisible Man. Like, he's going to take it and he's going to do it in a unique way,
Hmm.
whether you like it or not, which I always appreciate. And I did quite appreciate about this film. Um, I've seen a lot of mixed reviews on this film. Mostly I've seen in the middle. And then I've seen some very negative and I've seen some very positive. So overall, I'll probably agree with the masses on this. I'm somewhere in the middle on it. I liked it for sure. I did not hate it like some of my friends did.
Mm.
Um, you know, you know, I'm trying to avoid spoilers on this, but it's kind of hard to talk about without some. So, you know, just a mild warning here. We'll do our best, but I do think it's kind of impossible to discuss this film without really just talking about it for the most part, because
Yeah.
the movie doesn't have a whole lot going on.
Mm.
So, talking about it, there's only so much you can say before you're entering spoilers, because it's kind of
Yeah.
like the family goes, they're attacked by the wolf man, and then, the dad starts to become the wolf man
Right.
himself. And so I don't know what else, but I guess I'll say this. This feels like it's definitely inspired the most by Cronenberg's Fly.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's probably the film that it apes from the most,
Yeah.
and I like that approach. I like that this is why, yeah, I want to hear your thoughts, and then yeah.
And then you'll get into your mild spoilers. Yeah, I think I'm with you. Like I liked it. I enjoyed it. I definitely don't love it and I don't hate it.
Yeah.
Um I think that there's some pretty interesting stuff done with like the werewolf perspective in this that I
Mm.
liked that I haven't really seen in other werewolf films. And I thought that stuff was really cool, like just conceptually and how it plays out and everything. I like the location as well. I think that the setting is really nice, and overall, I think everyone's performance is pretty good. Um, my biggest problem was really just with like the some of the relationships, like the relationship between the husband and wife in this. I wasn't super sold on or like bought into in a lot of ways. But I think that the father daughter relationship is pretty solid and is definitely more of the focal point for the most part of the film, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's like, oh, I mean, overall, yeah, like I liked it.
Yeah. Um, I think I agree that the father daughter relationship is probably the most explored,
Yes.
but I still think there's a decent amount of, you know, like character building and
Mm,
relationship building between the husband and wife, but maybe just not as much. The film is very simplistic.
yeah.
Um and I it's very, it's stripped down
Hmm.
and pretty bare bones, and I think that people will be down on like that there's not that the plot's fairly thin.
Mm,
It's more supposed to just be a tragedy. It's
yeah.
more supposed to be a body horror movie about a father who's trying so hard to protect his family from himself
Yeah.
as he's turning into a monster. And here's kind of where like we're getting into spoilery type of stuff. So if you don't want to hear anything like that, you can definitely shut this off. But I really like that this approaches it from the sense of one night,
Hmm.
right? I also love that the transformation is done slowly
Yeah, it's a very
throughout the
slow
film
transformation.
and not just one quick,
Hmm.
and then and this is like where I would say this is probably the biggest, like I don't know how to say this without it being just like a full on spoiler for the most part, but for me, um what I really liked is that for me it definitely appears that once you become a wolf man,
Hmm.
you are permanently a wolf man.
Mm,
That there is no back and forth, that you
yeah.
don't, shed your skin and then grow it back the
Yes.
next
Yeah.
day in the morning or anything. Like this is handled like a disease.
Yeah.
And for that stuff, like the way that they deconstruct the wolf man and make it much more of an infection
Hmm.
that starts to change you and that you're going to be infected like this permanently is very cool to me.
Mm,
And it changes the lore, and we're
hmm.
not dealing with, a full moon or silver bullets or,
Hmm.
any of those tropes. Like
Yeah.
they've all been eliminated. This is more focused on like an illness,
Yeah.
which I love. That's the part of the film that I love. With the relationship stuff, because they're trying to do this thing with the wolf man and like how the disease is affecting him,
Mm.
while I think it's very cool conceptually, and yes, I've never seen it in the way they present it and they show it from multiple perspectives, which I really liked. It happens so quick that we don't get as much of him really feeling like when he's turning. I feel like where it could have really elevated itself is if we could have seen, like in The Fly with the Brundle fly,
Hmm.
he it's like this movie where he's slowly changing throughout the film, but there's so much dialogue between them and so much lamenting his decision, and things are falling apart and you really feel the weight of the change
Yeah.
because he has so much dialogue during it. And unfortunately, they take away some of his abilities to
Yeah.
communicate, and because of that, we're really relying on a physical performance to sell us on like, oh shit, I think so, this is going super wrong. And I think that's where the disconnect happens. I think that's
Mm.
unfortunately why you don't connect to it as much as you should, because we should be hearing from him more on his experience of this happening to him and why it's so tragic.
Yeah, we get kind of closed off from it, and definitely like pushed into like an outsider, perspective, I would say. I think that's a good point. I like also that it's treated like a disease and everything that that entails. I personally still prefer more of the like monstrous like fantasy werewolves, I guess. This is a lot more of like a realistic look at what a werewolf, like what lycanthropy would be basically,
Very
which is
realistic.
cool though. I think that that is
Yeah.
a very, I'm glad that
And
there's
all
a,
practical from what
yeah,
I can tell.
I'm glad that there's a different approach to this instead of like a standard werewolf. Even if I maybe prefer the standard werewolf, like visually, um, I still think that this was really a cool like perspective to take
I
on it.
appreciate the attempt.
I
I
do too.
really
Yeah, that's what
do.
I'm
Like
saying. Like,
I really respect what this film tried to pull off.
I
I
think,
just don't know if it executed all of its ideas, to the full extent that they could have been. But I do I do really admire and respect this film.
yeah, I think as you were saying, just maybe to like add on to it real quick, is like one of the things that makes really great body horror is having that emotional
Yeah,
connection. And
exactly.
that is, like you said, what's missing from this, because otherwise it could be a very, very successful body horror film. Um, but without it, it kind of, it just falls a little flat in that sense.
It's just
So
such a simple film.
it's very simple. I think that the biggest complaints people will have is that it's boring and slow.
Yeah, it's just
And yeah,
not a lot happens.
yeah,
That's for sure. I mean, you're really kind of recycling scenes over and over, and you're not getting a lot of variety in the
yeah. Well,
movie.
there's also like, even though I like the setting, the location is very limited, and
Plus,
we
it's
don't really.
super
It
dark,
is a dark
which
film.
is more realistic,
Yeah,
right? Like they don't have power where they're at for
yeah.
the most part, and it's
I
like
like
dark
that.
night
I
outside.
like
So
that we
like
get the kind of,
scenes are
yeah.
super dark, and you're like,
But yeah, I think a lot of people might be annoyed by it for sure. So I don't know. It definitely wasn't a failure for me. I did like it, and I'm glad we got it.
yeah,
Would it have been better with Ryan Gosling? Probably. Maybe. I don't know.
the exact same film, probably not.
No.
I mean, maybe him and Julia Garner would have better chemistry because
Mm.
Gosling just is like oozes chemistry,
Mhm.
and he's just so like lovable that it's like you probably would just gravitate. But their relationship is purposely strained,
Yes, yeah, it
right? So
is.
they don't really have a good connection, and I get what he's saying with it, but maybe that wasn't the ideal choice
Mm.
here. But yeah, I think that this one needed a rewrite. I think that this one needed to be thought out a little bit more, which is kind of interesting because, they did work on this for quite a while,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of script revisions, and Leigh Whannell did not write this alone. He wrote this with someone else. So I do think this might just kind of be a botched production that they
Mm.
may have just needed to pull the plug on and be done with. Um, but I think the main thing everyone wants to talk about, and probably should be the last thing we talk about here, and we kind of touched on it, but like the creature design, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the big thing when it comes to werewolf movies. Like how does the creature look, and how does it shape up, and how does it, you know, I overall, you know, it it kind of reminds me of almost a like a hillbilly werewolf, right? Like it almost looks like a wrong turn.
It's much more of like a man with wolf features
Yeah,
versus a wolf with man features.
sure. Yeah.
So, yeah. That's kind of the realistic
And I would have liked
aspect
to
that
have
we're
seen
talking
more
about.
of his body falling apart throughout
Yeah.
because I liked what we got, but it was like, not
Not
enough.
enough. I agree.
But there's some pretty cool stuff with that. As I said, like conceptually, very cool. I really like the ideas here,
Yeah.
but the execution is not up to snuff compared to like The Invisible Man or Upgrade, previous movies that he'd made. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is this pales in
Oh
comparison
yeah, definitely.
to Upgrade, like by a large margin. So it's probably my least favorite film. It's definitely my least favorite film he's made.
Mm.
But so it's a bit of a disappointment, but I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll be curious. I think that this is one that'll grow on people over time.
Hmm.
And this isn't the first time that they've tried to remake The Wolfman. Like we've had multiple iterations of this thing over the years. I think most recently was the Benicio del Toro one.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'll be curious on how this fares in 5 or 10 years. I think people will be more appreciative of its uniqueness.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious to see how it ages and what people think of it now too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
But yeah, that's about that.
that's about that.
Julia Garner is just as cute as hell, and always
She's
she's just the cutest fucking thing. But this movie, yeah, it's a bit of a disappointment for sure. I thought that this was kind of like a sure thing with Leigh Whannell and how well he did the Invisible Man, but this is a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy, but just it's
Just
gonna
a tiny bit.
it ain't making no list or anything. It's
No.
just gonna kind of be a mid film of the year.
Yeah.
Oh well, can't win them all.
You can't.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll see you in the comments. Adios.
Bye.